Hey folks, welcome back to Max Nave Horsemanship again. Glad you could join me. Today we're going to try something a little bit different because, well, I've mentioned before it tends to be pretty windy around here, and well, today is no exception. It happens to be one of those rather windy days, and if I was trying to do one of my typical videos, I'd probably end up with a lot of wind noise, mess with the audio, wouldn't work, but I really want to do something. So today I'm going to take you on a little tour of the place, but I'm going to stay in here. I'm going to stay in here so that the wind doesn't mess with the audio, but I'm going to let you take a look around out here, and we're going to look at some of the horses here and talk a little bit about them because, I don't know, maybe somebody will enjoy that because I know years ago I used to watch a guy's videos and, he'd quite often make observations. He'd, just focus on the horses and talk about what they're doing and things like that, and I have found it rather entertaining. So I'm hoping that maybe if I do something similar to that, maybe you'll find it entertaining too, because, well, who knows, might even a little bit educational, might be something in there. We'll see what happens, but we're going to take a look at the horses behind me in the pen there and see what we can come up with for you. Okay, we're back. Got the camera pointed the other direction now, and maybe we can go through some things here with you. Now, there's some interesting behavior right off the bat. Not surprising, though. I'll just zoom in on this guy and talk about him for a second. Well, I've showed him to you before. He's the completely untrained horse, and we just saw him getting a little bit. Well, he was being a little bit of a bully with one of the other horses, pushing him off the feed. And he doesn't do that a lot, but every once in a while he does. And I just talked about that in a recent video on how my theory is that they do it out of insecurity because, well, when they don't know much, they don't feel very confident because they don't have a great deal of knowledge. Oh, look at that. Oh. This is interesting. This is great. This is exactly the kind of stuff I was hoping to catch. A little interaction. Now, see, even though he is a fairly dominant horse, and the one that's backing up to him right now, she's not a very high horse. She's actually a lower horse. And when he tried getting pushy with her, she said, "Forget it. I've had enough of your crap." And proceeded to threaten to kick him, in which case he backed off. And I thought that was interesting, and it was actually a similar scenario earlier that gave me the idea to talk about what's going on here, because I saw some behavior going on where, again, he decided to get pushy with one of the other horses. The other horse reacted very similar to this one. There was no squealing, though, but he did turn around and kick at him. And at which point he decided, oh, I guess that doesn't work. Maybe I shouldn't do that. And he went back to eating, not bothering anybody. But we just saw him try and push his weight around again, and it didn't work. The little girl there, she's fairly low. She's actually one of the lower horses out here, and yet she was not going to put up with his nonsense. I guess maybe before I get too far into things here, I should talk a little bit about this place. Now, I don't want to talk too much about this place because I don't want to reveal a great deal of information on this place, because this is a private place. This is not a boarding facility, and I'm not sure that the owner really wants too many people to know about it. So we'll kind of, we're going to be pretty vague. Sorry. I know that some of you might not like that, but that's the way it is. We're going to be a little bit vague. And we'll just say it's somebody that actually really likes animals, and when somebody says, hey, I need a place to keep my horse for a bit, he can't say no. He's a nice guy, very nice guy. And actually only one of the horses here is actually his. Only 2 horses on this property that have anything at all to do with the property owner. The rest are horses that people have for various reasons, they needed a place to put their horses, and well, that's what happened. One of there's a couple of horses here where the owner is actually out of the country at the moment, and it just wasn't sensible or practical to take the horses with them. So they said, hey, can you just take care of my horses till I get back? So that's why they're here. One of them is mine. I was in the middle of moving, and I needed a place to put our horse until we had a permanent place, which we do now, but we just haven't got around to moving her because she's okay here. It's not a bad place. She's getting looked after okay, good enough. I'm happy. I don't own a trailer at the moment. I just sold my second trailer and I haven't replaced it yet, so at the moment I don't even have a trailer to transport her. So we have a couple of options, and I'm not too worried about it. We're also waiting until most of the snow was gone. It'd make life just a whole lot easier, both loading, unloading, opening, closing gates even, that some of it have for quite a while been buried in snow, things like that. So I don't really want to reveal too much about this place, so we're going to be a little vague in certain areas, but I do want to talk about some of the horses that are here, because I've been noticing some interactions between horses today that interesting, and I'm hoping that some of them come back in a minute here, because they just up and walked away on me here, and just about no surprise, I turned the camera on, they walk away just when I want to talk about them. I think they know. Yeah, that's it. Well, fortunately they've all decided to come back, and well, I just threw a little bit more hay that was laying around loose on the ground. I just threw it in the feeder just to attract them back, and that's good, because feeding time is a great time to observe some of the hierarchy behavior, which can be quite interesting sometimes. And as I was saying earlier, well, you got to see that guy in action. He got his butt kicked by a little filly because he tried getting bossy, and that was actually about the second time that I'd seen that within a half an hour. And that's kind of what inspired me to do this. I just found it really interesting watching it happen, because I was talking about in a recent video about how that black guy was bad for doing that. Yeah, that one. And he's the herd leader, and he would frequently chase off other horses just for the fun of it. I don't know why, but he would. Now these two here are the ones that I mentioned. There was two grays here owned by the same person, and that's them right here. They generally get along pretty good, and will hang out together and even eat side by side. But what's interesting is, though, even though they are, well, somewhat, they're kind of middle of the pack kind of thing. The other horses, there's a couple other horses that will definitely get out of their way. And actually the one on the right there was the one that just earlier took a kick at that guy there. And he doesn't take crap. But he will still back off from the herd leader. If the herd leader tells him to move, he will. Now this guy here, he's kind of interesting though, because even though he's got a buddy that he gets along good with, and they frequently eat side by side, when it comes to feeding time, if there's anything else around to nibble on or something, he won't even compete with the other horses, even though he is fairly dominant. He can be. The other horses, most of them will give him room and stay out of his way, but if the feeder gets pretty crowded, he'll actually walk away and go nibble on something else, or lick on the salt block or something like that. He's not terribly competitive. Rather interesting, even though he's got the dominance over several horses here, that he could easily walk in and eat wherever he wanted. He doesn't do that, just not in his personality. And this is one of the things I find interesting, is how each horse is a little bit different. And well, this is why I find it fascinating watching this stuff, because herd dynamics, always interesting. Now this black guy and the gray on the right, those two have been buddies for quite a while. They've been together for a while, so they got their own little dynamic going. And even though this guy here is not the herd leader, he's not intimidated by the guy that is. Well, not very often anyhow. And it's kind of funny, because every once in a while they push one another around, and you got to really be paying attention to realize who's actually the leader. And it turns out this guy here, who I thought was number 2, he's not necessarily number 2. There's some others that just, they will not take crap from him. In fact, several of them. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of these other ones here because there's a few others that are kind of interesting. Now, right over here, you see some interesting dynamics going on. There's 4 of them together, and they're all getting along quite well. The little black one on the left, that's the little filly that just finished kicking at that gray. Oh, now they're pushing Molly away. The gray that you're seeing there, that's mine. The other 3 on the left, I don't know anything about them, at least not a whole lot, except what I've been able to figure out just by observing them. But they kind of are a package deal. The 3 of them came together. I don't know from where, if they're temporary, permanent. I have no idea. I don't know much about these guys. I do believe that Paint is lame because I've seen him moving and it looks like he favors the one front. I also think maybe he's a little bit older, and I think maybe at some point in his life he hasn't been treated very nice because, well, that Paint and that little black one there, they're quite the couple. They're really tight. Always see those 2 together. And it's interesting because very different personalities. The little black one, she's quite social. She'll always come up and say hi to me. And for the longest time, that Paint wanted nothing to do with me. He'd always go wherever that other one went, but he'd never walk right up to me. He'd always stay closer to her backside when she'd come up to me. And he'd stand there and look at me, but he wouldn't actually come up to me. Kind of interesting. But those 2 are almost inseparable. And like I say, very different personalities. One very social, one quite nervous and wary of humans. I do believe there's a chance that maybe somebody didn't treat him very nice at some point in his life. So he's a little sketchy. But all 3 of those, there's 2 mares and a gelding there. I believe the little mare in the middle is the youngest. And I don't know the ages of any of these horses, at least not those ones. I can only just guess by looking at them approximately. I would say she's probably young, maybe 6 to 8 years old sort of thing. That Paint on the left, I believe he might actually be somewhere closer to the 20-year-old range. Just something about the way he looks and moves and things like that. That other little brown one there, I have no idea how old she is. Kind of hard to tell. And unless you take a good look at the teeth or you have some way of knowing how old they are for sure, it can actually be quite difficult. But I find it interesting that they're being quite accepting of my mare in there. I did see a minute ago they pushed her a little bit, but she's still right there beside her. She's not feeling intimidated or threatened by them in any way, shape, or form. So clearly those 3 there, they're easy to get along with and aren't into the hierarchy thing. Now again, right back to this black guy that I've been playing with. And I said before how he liked chasing horses off. Well, notice he's not doing it today. He's got another horse right beside him there eating, and he's completely ignoring the other horse. And he's probably going to make a liar out of me now. No, he's looking at the other horse. The ears are not pinned. There's no signs of aggression or anything. He's not telling the other horse to get lost. He's being totally accepting of the other horse. And I find that really interesting, very fascinating. And because I say, it wasn't long ago, and that was definitely not his MO. He definitely had a little bit of an issue and liked chasing other horses around and pushing them off of their hay. And things are no different today than they were any other time, and yet he doesn't care, And in fact, just the other day, that gray on the right there that is hanging out with the lower horses right now was actually eating right beside him, and he was completely ignoring her. Didn't mind at all. Now she's actually moved over a bit and she's getting a little bit closer to the high one. And normally she wouldn't do that. She'd keep her distance from him because he was, well, in fact, he normally wouldn't let other horses as close to him as he is right now. There's another little shot there. You can see him eating away. There's a horse, another guy, he's got his nose there inches away from him. And, oh, whatever, centimeters, whatever. Not very far. They were quite close on time. And even that other mare on the left there, fairly close to him. It wasn't long ago he would never have let that happen. He would have been chasing horses off for sure. This is great. This is fantastic. But like I said, now I don't know his age either. He's not real young though. Talking to his owner, the little training that he did get was about 10 years ago. So I suspect he was at least 2, 3, maybe 4. So he's, you know, somewhere 12 to 14 years old. Oh, look at that. The two herd mates are getting along and the leader is being fine. Now, this, like I said, this guy is actually a little bit higher. And he just moved over there. And the other mare, she said, nah, I better get out of here. I don't want nothing to do with that guy. He's kind of bossy. What's interesting now is she's actually moving in between one of the other ones, the one that's the bully on the right, and the one on the left that belongs to the person that's out of town. And he's a fairly high horse, and he's actually a fair bit bigger than her too. Rather thick horse. That's the one I mentioned before. I figure he's part draft. We don't know for sure. Back one, we have determined that he is in fact a purebred quarter horse. His owner is quite confident. I don't know if he's registered and she has papers or not, but they're quite confident that he is in fact, they said, we know for a fact he is a quarter horse. Completely untrained herd mate over here is unknown breeding. But looking at him, I suspect he is of the newer bloodline of quarter horse. There's, for those of you that aren't familiar with some of the different bloodlines, some of the newer bloodlines of quarter horses have got some thoroughbred in them. Oh, no, see, he's being a brat again. He was just biting the other horse, and the other horse took a kick at him. Now, it's the third time today I've seen that happen with him. And I know that she is definitely not a very high one. She's somewhere in the middle. And again, another one of the lowest horses. She's actually quite social though, but she's quite close to that black horse, and he's not bothering her at all. He's leaving her alone completely. This is so nice to see them getting along like this. I just missed that one. Sorry, you didn't get to see it. The mare on the right there just took a kick at that gray that was bugging her earlier, that you saw biting at her. She went back to minding her own business, eating, and as he walked past behind her, she took a kick at him just to make it very clear to him that she's not going to put up with this crap. He's actually standing just behind the gray on the left. You can't really see him, and he's very hesitant to come back in. This is the third time now today that he's gotten his butt kicked, so to speak. None of them have actually made contact with him, but they made it very clear to him that we're not going to put up with your crap. Gave him a little bit of an education. But just as an example of how different horses have different personalities, and I've mentioned this before, that no two are alike. And this is the completely untrained one over there, back there behind there, and he's fairly confident. The one that has had a little bit of training, not much, not enough, clearly not enough, because he's still a pretty jumpy, worried horse, and it's been many years since he's even been ridden. I would not recommend anybody getting on a horse like that at this point. I don't think we could even throw a saddle on him without him having a meltdown. He's just too worried about things. If I worked with him a bit, and I probably will, because I did talk to his owner, and I said, is it okay if I work with him, alter lead and all that stuff? And they said, sure, go ahead. Got complete go ahead on that one. In person, face to face, so there's no misunderstandings. So we probably will do some work with that guy, because in spite of his age, like he's not a young horse anymore, but he's smart, he's willing, he's sensitive, and I think it wouldn't take a whole lot to bring him back up to where he needs to be so that he can be ridden. But you can see again, he's got another horse eating right beside him. In fact, they're even touching heads. Oh, that's Cam. Yeah, that's his buddy, so he doesn't mind him too much. But even him, he used to tell him to get lost too. And he's being very tolerant today. You can see how close the heads are together, and they're getting along just fine. In fact, he moved away. He says, yeah, okay, I'll just let you eat. Go ahead, whatever. This is really interesting stuff because that's the herd leader. He's the high horse here. He doesn't put up with crap from other horses, and yet he's tolerating this numbskull here who keeps moving in on him. I find that kind of interesting. That I think he's finally figured out that's the only one he can get away with it with, because he's a little more tolerant. They know each other fairly well. They've been together quite a bit. So I think he's figured it out that he can get away with being next to that horse. That one's not going to give him a hard time. And he's not trying to push him around either. He's not biting at him or anything like that, because that doesn't generally work too well. He's tried that a couple times today with other horses, and it always resulted in him getting told what's for. Oh, look at that. That's really interesting. The black one actually pulled out of there, away from him, and gave him room. Okay, they're in a different spot now, but it's the same two. And the black horse has finally decided he's had enough of this numbskull following him around and eating beside him. And he actually, not very aggressively, but he actually just took a little poke at him with his nose and said, "Stop bugging me." And the other guy backed off a tiny bit, but not much, because he just, as I say, the difference in personalities. It's not that he's a particularly high or aggressive horse, but he doesn't get fazed by higher horses, and I've seen this happen before. It's interesting again. The black horse moved away, although he looked a little annoyed about it, and he actually did chase off a couple horses at that end, but he was getting squeezed out by a couple of others, so he actually moved down to the other end of the feeder so they could have some hay in peace, and he just told the other ones to go away. He didn't even do it terribly aggressively. Very interesting. And there he is again, letting another much lower horse eat next to him. And she walked up there on her own accord, knowing who he is, because she knows who he is. She's moved for him before. And without hesitation, she walked around him and got beside him and went back to eating. No worries at all. Very interesting stuff. But like I said before, with those two there, not too often you find them apart from one another. You got that little mare there and that paint gelding. They're pretty tight buddies, and they are in fact eating right beside one another, and that's actually no surprise whatsoever, because I've watched those two. Like I said, you seldom see them apart from one another, and you can tell they're clearly friends, because look how close they are, how close they're eating together. Their heads are touching one another as they eat. And that's not something you will see with horses that don't particularly get along. There's always a little bit of room between them. I'll just go over to the other ones to show you. See these two over here eating? You can see there's some room. See these ones? There's a little bit of room. Not a huge amount, but there's room there. That's a good indicator right there of they're buddies. Those two are definitely buddies. No question about it. Now, as I mentioned before, that one there, that one came with the other two. Don't know much about them, but obviously she's not as much of a buddy with those two, but You will see the three of them together. Oh, I'm sorry I didn't catch that one on camera. For the first time today, that guy just took a kick at another horse, and he actually hit it too. But he had also just been chased off by another horse, which was really odd because the one that chased him off was not a higher horse. But he seemed to be mad about it, and so he took it out on another horse. That's the way I'm reading it, is he got mad because another horse chased him off, so he decided he's going to take it out on another horse, so he chased off another horse, and now he's gone back to eating, all peaceable-like, minding his own business. Oh, and just for the record, the one that actually ended up chasing him off was his buddy here, the totally untrained guy, that has been chasing other horses off today quite a bit. And what was funny is the herd leader was the only one he got away with it with. He actually was successful in chasing him off. And that was, like I said, he got mad and went and chased another horse. Now again, those three are back together again. And that's the ones I said that, those three came as a package. They kind of got their own little herd going on there with the three of them. But the paint in that black one, well, dark brown, whatever you want to call her, they are definitely buddies. And the one on the left, although it's definitely one of their friends, it's a little more independent, and you don't always see all three of them together. But the two of them there, yeah, you seldom see those two apart. Now the one there that you can just see his head was the one I was talking about earlier, where he doesn't always feel the need to push in between other horses and eat. He'll just wait his turn and eat by himself, or go nibble on something else, or lick the salt block or something, even though he's definitely a higher horse, and other horses will move out of his way without a hesitation. I've seen it several times. He's not pushy, he's not bossy, but other horses do definitely respect him. But at the same time, he doesn't seem to feel the need to exert that authority. And as you can see right now, two horses are eating, and he's just standing back there, minding his own business, waiting his turn. And when the rest of them are done and get their heads out of the feeder, then maybe he'll go in and get something to eat. In the meantime, he's going to be patient. Again, this is the completely untrained one here, and from what I have been able to ascertain about him, I don't think he's horribly old. I'm going to guess somewhere 6 to 8 years old, kind of thing. Not super young either. I don't know if you're seeing a pattern here. We always seem to end up with grays around us. Yes, I like grays, but I actually don't seek them out. They just seem to show up, and there's actually 4 of them here, which is interesting because grays are not super common. You'll find a lot more bays and dark bays and sorrels and things like that, and yet half the herd here is grays. Where I'm moving her to, another gray. One of the horses I just recently got rid of, another gray, and that one was given to me. I didn't shop for that one. I didn't look for another gray. Okay, I like grays, I admit it, but I didn't go shopping for that one. This one here, I didn't pick her because she was a gray when I bought her the first time. I just picked her because I liked her. She was approximately the right age. She'd had some training. Actually, the original trainer had done a reasonably good job on her as far as a riding horse, but she's always been, how shall we say, interesting to ride because she's just a little bit odd. Oh well. Like I said, every horse is different. And I'm not going to elaborate on this one and some of the antics. I've been told by many people that I've shared her antics with that no way, horses won't do that. And I'm like, oh yeah, you don't know this horse. You have not met this horse. She does a lot of things that, I did a video on. I said, if you hear people saying always and never, run away. They don't know what they're talking about. And I had a lot of people saying always and never. When it came to this one, they always made reference to her behaviors and well, basically called me a liar and said, no, it's not possible. horses will always and never this, that, and the other thing, and there's no way she could have done that, and yeah, whatever. There's exceptions to every rule, and I've said that before. This one happens to be an exception to an awful lot. And again, he's moved, he's at a different place now, but this is the one that I said, he will just quietly wait his turn. And when the others are all done, he'll come clean up what they leave. He's patient, he'll wait, and he doesn't feel the need to chase other horses off, even though he absolutely can make other horses move. I've seen him do it. He has control over at least half the herd is lower than him. So he, if he wanted to, he could easily make the move and say, that's it, I want your hay, and they'd get out of there. And at the moment, there's actually a few of them standing around by the hay that aren't even eating anymore, so they've had their fill. And if he really wanted to, he could just tell them to get lost and walk in and have some hay, but he's not doing that. He's just standing back there, biding his time and waiting his turn. And when the time is right, he'll move in, and without any conflicts whatsoever, he'll have his fill. And that's it. Every horse is different. Again, he's letting other horses eat nearby him. The one on the left just moved a little closer towards him, actually, and she's definitely a fair bit lower than him. I know that's actually mine, and I know how they get along. He actually has chased her off a few times. I've seen it happen in the past, so I know it can happen, but she was even closer than that yesterday when the two of them were eating side by side. It was pretty interesting, and that was when it finally dawned on me, hey, wait a minute, he's never let her do that before. That was when I started noticing the change. But just looking at them eating away right now is a pretty good example of something I've said before. I don't think I've mentioned it in a video, but how horses need room, and if you give them enough space, they'll work things out and they'll get along. And you can see that there's 4 of them on screen right now that you can see, all eating, and there's a little distance between them, and they're all doing just fine. They get along, and that's where it's really important. Spread the food out if you got more than one horse. Give them room, and as long as they've got enough room, they'll sort things out. They'll get along. Everybody will get to eat, and you won't have conflicts, and you won't have anybody going hungry. Well, I think that's enough for today, but I just wanted to show you just some natural interaction, because a lot of you don't have that many horses around that you can observe. So it's kind of a fun thing to do every once in a while. I always find it fascinating just to watch herd dynamics and how horses interact with one another and get along or don't, depending on the situation. So I just thought I'd take you along and explain a little bit of what I see happening, and well, you get to see for yourself some of the things that are happening, and it was kind of interesting, I thought. Okay, maybe it's boring as heck for some of you, I don't know. Well, whatever. But I'm glad you joined me and took the time to watch this video, and go out and play with your horse and have a good day. Bye now.